Good morning, everyone. Can I ask everyone to take their seats? We do have a quorum. Turn off my phone. Okay. Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. This is the 34th agenda meeting for the Planning Committee in this year. And we do have quorum. Any declarations of interest? Yes, Councillor Shirelli.
Okay, I don't have it in front of me, but as near as I can remember, on item number 1, I declare a deemed indirect pecuniary interest.
As your daughter?
Because my daughter works at Shepherds of Good Hope, and theoretically they could bid on this, which should not be enough for a conflict of interest, but I will declare, since I'm not going to spend $1,000 to get an opinion to tell me.
And you're consistent. You're consistent in raising that every time.
But this is a little further because they're not even involved at this point.
So we'll ask you to. This is a stretch, but it's not a leap. So anyway, okay. You're consistent. So when we get to item 1.
Which we should get to pretty soon.
Yes, and we're going to have a presentation. So confirmation of minutes from the 11th of October. Any changes, or is it carried? Carried. Thank you. So the item number 1, we are having a presentation. It's the Surplus Federal Real Property for Homelessness Initiative, and Councillor Shirelli has declared an interest. So we'll hold that one. Item number 2 is the application to demolish 234 O'Connor Street, a property designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act and located in the Centertown Heritage Conservation District. And I know that Vice Chair Tierney has a motion to defer on that. But I think we'll hold that. Come back after the homeless one, just in case anyone wants to say anything to the deferral. Item 3 is the application to alter the Bethany Hope Centre, 1140 Wellington Street West, a property designated under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act, and we're going to hold that for presentation. I think that's a significant property in Councillor Leeper's area, and I think, it's worthy of a presentation. Sure. Item number 4, the application for demolition and new construction at 580 Mariposa. It's a property designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act and located in the Rockcliffe Park Heritage Conservation District. We do have Catherine and Anthony here from FOTAN, and Anthony Bruni. There you are the architect, and you support this. Do you need to speak if we carry this item? Okay, so thank you. Is the item carried? Carried. Thank you. Okay, item number 5 is the designation of 307 Richmond Road under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. I have no speakers registered. Are there any questions? Is that carried? Thank you. Item number 6, updates to delegated authority under the Ontario Heritage Act. No speakers registered. And does anyone have any questions, comments? No? Okay, so is that item carried? Thank you. Item number 7 is, I know I've long awaited this, and even before Councillor Kakish became the councillor for the area, the updated serviceability report, class environmental assessment official plan amendment 76, areas 8A, 9A, 9B, Leitrim development area. We have no speakers registered, and we're not having a presentation. It did take a very long time. It was very complex and about a year longer than what we were initially thinking. So good work to bring it together. Did anybody want to hold this item? Is it carried? Thank you. And then the next item is the interest fees in respect of deferred municipal development charges for 12 Meon Court. And we have, this is an item from Councillor Kakish, and I think we'll hold that one. Okay. Do you want to hold it? Okay. Number 9 is the invitation of zoning amendment, proposed farmers market, Riverview, Earl Armstrong Park and Ride, and we do have a speaker, so we'll hold that one. So we'll go back to the first of the agenda.
Sorry, Madam Chair, can I ask a question? Madam Chair? Oh, you asked it? Okay.
Yes, Councillor. Okay. For us, we have Shelley Van Buskirk, and congratulations in your new role, Shelley. Welcome to, I think this is your first big presentation here. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of committee. I'm Shelley Van Buskirk. I'm the manager of the Housing Services Branch here at the City. And with me I have Saeed Zaya, who's the program manager for Affordable Housing Unit. So the report we have before you today is the Surplus Federal Real Property for Homelessness Initiative, or SURFI as we like to call it. And this is a federal program that provides, makes land available for successful proponents to build affordable and supportive housing. So we do have a short presentation for you this morning, and I'm going to ask Saeed to continue.
Okay, great. Thank you, Shelley. So the Surplus Federal Real Property for Homeless Initiative, it's a federal funding program that we've applied to in the past to purchase properties, or apply for funding to purchase properties from the federal government. In this case, and in previous cases, that was Canada Land's company. We've done this twice in the past. First was with McLean Cooperative Homes, where we purchased land on Albion Road and developed that, or had that redeveloped into 64 apartment units and townhouse units, which is now McLean Co-op. Second was on 800 Montreal Road. Now this site has a new address at 140 Den Haag. That was more recent, a few years ago, and the site's been recently developed into a 74-unit apartment building just across from the CMHC headquarters. In this particular case, the City is planning to make an application to the SURFI program for funding to acquire the lands at 289 Carling Avenue. And if we're successful, we expect to issue an RFP to develop these lands sometime in late 2017 or 2018, depending on when we would close and the property will be transferred to the City. This is just a location map showing, generally speaking, where the property is. It's just east of Dow's Lake on the north side. The property is approximately 1,270 square meters. Actually, it's exactly 1,270 square meters, and zoned R5B. So what we're proposing would fit within the existing zoning. With respect to the rules from the federal government under SURFI, currently they're following the Housing First model, which is requiring us to create what we call supportive housing. We've got some examples here of recent supportive housing developments that have been created through funding that was previously approved under this council and previous councils. The four examples that we're showing are 42 units, which are close to completion on Clementine Boulevard. This is with Ottawa Salis. 42 units with Cornerstone Housing for Women, which is located on Booth Street, 34 units with John Howard Society, and 48 units under construction in Orleans on St. Joseph Boulevard with Montfort Renaissance. So the next steps, if the report is approved by committee and council, we expect to submit the application this fall to the federal government, and depending on when, or if and when the application is approved, so if it's approved this fiscal year, we may move more quickly. If it's approved next fiscal year, it would be delayed a little bit. At this time, it looks like it may not be approved until next fiscal year. So we expect to negotiate and execute agreements later in 2017 and issue the RFP late 2017 or early 2018, and then start construction. That brings me to the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Councillor Rockington?
Thank you for that overview. Just could you clarify, what are the City of Ottawa's requirements up and above the application, assuming we're successful? I think your report states within 5 years there has to be a development in place with occupancy, but we are permitted to work with a third-party contractor, builder. They can build it. Can they be the owner? What's the long-term commitment for the City of Ottawa versus a private housing provider?
The commitment in this particular case would be the same, whether or not the City of Ottawa or the private housing provider makes an application to the SURFI program. But the commitment is that the city, through another party, so after we issue the RFP, that housing provider would take on the application, provide housing for a minimum of 15 years. It's not usually an issue for us because our agreements typically require that housing providers provide the affordable housing for 35 years.
So who will own the land? I mean, we're gonna acquire the land for $1, assuming we're successful, and then we want to get going almost immediately on constructing a dwelling, a building, but are we going to then sell the land to the builder and they become the new owner, or what is our long-term role with this property?
That's correct. We would first purchase the property, then we would issue the RFP and provide funding to develop the property, but we would transfer the obligations and the property to a housing provider to build and operate the housing.
At the City of Ottawa's cost?
No, it would be at a nominal fee. So we would be obtaining a grant from the federal government to purchase the property. So so we would obtain the property for $1, then we would transfer that to a housing provider for $1 as well.
So we're not contributing towards the cost of any construction of the actual building itself?
Not other than what was previously approved under the Investing in Ontario for Affordable Housing program. So we would use those funds to develop the property, but there are no new funds needed to develop this.
We're just facilitating this whole process.
That's correct.
Okay, so who are we competing against for the acquisition of the land? Who else is going to be applying?
I'm not aware of any other party currently applying for this particular site, so it's only the city. And typically in Ottawa, the housing providers will wait for us to make the application and then, submit their applications to us under the RFP process, since we do control the funding for development.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Chernachenko, and then Councillor Nussbaum. Okay, Councillor Nussbaum.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question about process. So the Canada Lands Company has obviously indicated a willingness to sell the property. And do we have any positive inclinations at this stage or indications from the SURFI program that there might be money available for this, or what kind of signals have we gotten thus far?
There are no guarantees under the SURFI program, but we do have some positive feedback that funding is likely to be available this fiscal year or next fiscal year from the federal government, yes.
Thanks.
Councillor Chernachenko.
Thank you very much. First of all, about process, understandably, neighbors hearing about this for the first time, as is the case for pretty much everyone, have concerns. People have concerns at this committee about any new development in their neighborhood, but particularly when they hear supportive housing, housing for homeless, etc. What is the standard consultation process? At this point, we're seeking permission as a city to acquire the land, the authority to do that. Can you walk us through what a standard consultation process would be? Would it be normal to have consulted before coming here to committee like this? Yes, no, and then what would be the next steps in terms of anticipated public consultation?
So typically, when we've made applications in the past, there typically has not been any formal consultation with communities on the application. There's no requirement to consult, but it doesn't mean that we don't need to consult either. However, if we are successful, we could engage in some consultation in addition to what is required under the Planning Act. But normally we would follow the requirements under the Planning Act with respect to consultation for development of affordable housing.
So consulting for authority to purchase land would be highly unusual. Is that right? Yeah, so
yes, it would be.
So there's nothing unusual about this process to date. We see images. Would it be fair to describe them as conceptual, really, just to give residents some idea of what it might look like? How far along? People hate to know that it's a done deal and that public consultation later would be pointless because you've already decided what you're going to do. Can you describe where the city is at then?
Okay. The only sort of conceptual design work that we would have completed to date was just to ensure that the site could be developed and that we would be able to, accommodate a range of units. So in the report we talked about 40 to 45 units. However, the site could possibly accommodate more, but there is no finalized plans for the site. There's no design that's been approved. All that is, like I said, it's very highly conceptual, and it would really be based on the RFP process and any other consultation requirements that would be required in the future before any development could be approved.
So am I correct in summarizing the current status as the height is still to be determined, the size is still to be determined, the actual developer is still to be determined, the type of occupants, the agency that might operate it are all still to be determined. So when we consult with the public, should the city acquire the land, all of those are still open to discussion?
Correct. Most or almost all of those are to be determined, except for the fact that we have to use this for affordable supportive housing, that meets the federal requirements. That's the only part that we would have to continue to honor.
And since I should put it on record, because I've been through this with the Salis Ottawa, the city is not allowed to discriminate by occupant type.
That's correct. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? So on the item, the surplus federal real property for homeless initiative, is that carried? Thank you, everybody. So now I want to jump ahead to item number 8. I thought that there was interest in holding this, but I misunderstood. This is the interest fees in respect of deferred municipal development charges for 12 Meon Court that Councillor Kakish is bringing forward today. And it's not waiving the fees, but waiving the interest. Does anyone have any reason to hold that? Is it carried? Well, you do. Oh, you do. You are holding it? Then we're not talking about it yet. Sorry, I misunderstood. I thought somebody was, that's why we held it. So we'll come to that later. So we have a presentation now on the application to alter the Bethany Hope Center at 1140. Oh, 2? Oh, yes. I jumped over it. Sorry, everybody. The application to demolish 234 O'Connor Street, a property designated in Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act and located in the Centertown Heritage Conservation District. This comes to us from Built Heritage Committee, and we have no speakers on it today, but Councillor Tierney has a motion.
Keeping me in line over here. All right, so whereas the report recommends refusal of the application to demolish 234 O'Connor Street, a property located in the Centertown Heritage Conservation District and designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act, and whereas the statutory 90-day timeline for consideration of this application under the Ontario Heritage Act will expire November 6, 2016, and whereas on October 17, 2016, the applicant agreed to extend the statutory 90-day time limit to November 30th, 2016, in order to allow them further discussion, be it resolved that the report in regards to 234 O'Connor Street, a property designated under Part of the Ontario Heritage Act located in the Centertown Heritage Conservation District, be postponed for consideration to the Planning Committee of November 8th, 2016.
Thank you. I have two speakers, Jamie Posen-Fotan. Jamie P., you agree with the motion to defer to the next meeting? Okay, and we have Amber I'm sorry, I'm going to torture your name. Polican, yeah. I never would have guessed. And I understand that if we defer it, you don't need to speak to them. Okay. Thank you very much. Anybody here want to speak to the item of deferral, the question of deferral? So it'll be before us at the next meeting. Okay? Ms. Carey? Thank you very much. Thank you for coming out today. We'll see you next time. Now, item number 3, application to alter the Bethany Hope Center at 1140 Wellington Street West, a property designated under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. And we are going to have a presentation on this because we spent quite a bit of time in the last term. That started in the last term, yeah. And here we are before us, and so, Leslie, you're doing the presentation? Go ahead, please. And welcome Don Herwire is here with us, too.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. This presentation is about the application to alter the Bethany Hope Centre at 1140 Wellington Street West, which is a property designated under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. The property is located on the south side of Wellington Street, just west of Rosemont, so the Rosemont Library is here, if you're familiar with that. It is a large property. This image doesn't quite show the current condition. There is now a 6-story condo building that has been constructed on this site, and it is also adjacent to the Grace Manor. This is the north elevation of the building. It was constructed in 1924 by the Salvation Army and was owned by the Salvation Army up until around 2013, 2014 when it was sold to Tamarack. It was designated by City Council in 2014 after a long process through the Wellington West Community Design Plan. The zoning for the site was set through that process. Just as a little bit of background, there was minutes of settlement with the Ontario Municipal Board, through the Ontario Municipal Board, between the city and the owner of the property, which was the Salvation Army at the time, to permit a 13-story building at the rear of this site, as well as preservation of the existing building and its front lawn, which was considered to be a heritage attribute. So there is construction going on right now, which is why it doesn't look like it has much of a front lawn, but it will be restored in the future. This is a portion of the rear facade. Again, these are recent photos. You can see the new building that has been constructed at the corner of Rosemont here in the photograph. This is the east facade and the west facade. So this is facing the Grace Manor. This white addition here was excluded from the designation, as it was a later construction, and has been proposed for demolition through this application. So as I mentioned, the property is protected under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act as an individually designated building, and that is the reason this application is before the committee today, because City Council approval is required to alter designated buildings. So the application is for the construction of a 13-story apartment building that is linked to the historic building, and this is in accordance with the minutes of settlement for the zoning bylaw. It also includes building restoration and maintenance, and I believe there is a motion before the committee today related to the windows, which I'll talk a little bit about. Construction of a firewall between the new and the old, and that's required as a part of the building code because of the size of the building that is being added. Some alterations to the front facade of the building to allow commercial office uses on the ground and basement floors, and construction of a new entrance along the west facade. So this is the site plan for the site. The light gray portion here is the existing building, and this portion back here is the link between the two. So there is a setback between the existing building of this area here, which is a 1-story portion with a terrace on top, and then this darker gray portion is the 13-story portion of the building. You can see here the front lawn will be reinstated with some walkways and a gazebo that was part of a public process that the applicant undertook to come up with ideas of how to use that space in the front. This is the future proposed north elevation of the project. So as you can see, the original building is retained in its entirety. It is set back, the tower is set back from the original building. One of the heritage attributes of this building is its symmetrical facade, and the proposed tower has attempted to reflect that character in terms of the patterning of the windows and the central feature. This is the east elevation, so you can see here this provides you a good image of how the setback has been dealt with from the tower. So we have the entirety of the original building, a link here, which is a 1-story link with a terrace on top, and then the 13-story apartment building. This is the rear of the apartment building, so of course you can't see the historic building. And then this is the west elevation, so adjacent to the Grace Manor. Here we have an addition of a small one-story glass link that will provide access to the new building, but it is constructed adjacent to or connected to the historic building as well. But it is set back from the front facade and allows the original building to continue to read as the primary feature on the site. Just a couple of perspective images to give you an idea, and here maybe is a good time to talk about the windows. The windows on the front facade were of some concern to the Built Heritage Subcommittee as they were being proposed for replacement with new wood windows. The applicant has, since the Built Heritage Subcommittee meeting of October the 17th, or 13th, sorry, has gone back and reevaluated these windows and has determined that most of them can be saved and restored in situ. Obviously, the exceptions would be the areas here on the front facade where some of them are being turned into entrance openings and doors. And there is one window that has to be altered in order to match all the others. But for the most part, the applicant has committed to restoring the windows on the front of the building. This perspective shows you sort of from the corner, so you can see a portion of the front lawn. This hard surfacing here is required as part of the emergency access for the building. This is the new link that will provide access to the new building. And then here you can also see, again, the setback between the new and old, and this is where you see these yellow dots. These are umbrellas indicating that this is a terrace. So the recommendation today is to approve the application with the modifications that include the restoration of the windows, issue the heritage permit with a 2-year expiry date, and delegate authority for minor design changes. Sorry, I need to change the name of our department. It's been changed for a while, and force of habit, to the planning department. And for the reasons for this are that the application is sensitive to the character of the building. It preserves the heritage attributes that were approved by City Council through the designation, and it meets the standards and guidelines for the conservation of historic places in Canada.
Councillor Nussbaum?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make a brief comment about this. Thank you to staff for the report. This came up at BHSC a couple of weeks ago, and full credit to member Sandy Smallwood, who raised the question of the windows, and then full credit to the applicant, who thoughtfully considered the question and came back and agreed that trying to restore the original windows made sense. So it's actually a good news story all around. Thanks.
Congratulations. That was Mr. Hoban. Yeah. Anyway, anyone else have any comments, questions? Good. We have a motion from Vice Chair Tierney.
Great. I think it's been well explained, so I'll go, therefore, be resolved that the attached letter and plan submitted by the applicant be added to the report as document 9, and 2, recommendation 2 be deleted, and recommendation 1 be replaced with the following. Approve the application to alter Bethany Hope Center, 1140 Wellington Street West, according to the plan submitted by Barry J. Hoban and Associates Architects, Inc. on September 8th, 2016, as document 4, 5, and 6, and amended by document 9 as submitted on October 21st, 2016, as conditional on approval of the other required planning application.
Carried? Carried. And on the report as amended? Carried? Thank you, everybody. Now we're going to go to number 8, which is Councillor's item. Where is he? So, interest fees in respect to 12 Meon Court and in Heart's Desire in Barrhaven. Councillor Brockington?
No, thank you, Madam Chair. I've read the report, and I appreciate the local councillor, Councillor Kakish, bringing this forward. I'm just trying to get a better understanding the frequency of these types of issues. This, from what I understand, is fairly unique, but there was a public, I don't want to say public consultation, but the development community was consulted. There was some engagement from the City of Ottawa on this matter, and they're not a private developer. They're homeowner. I'm just trying to wrap my head around whether or not, if this is approved, whether we're opening ourselves up to other requests for other similar circumstances. I know when I first took office, a well-known lobbyist came to me and said there was a developer in my ward whose application had been delayed for a number of reasons in 2014, and because the DCs had changed, had to pay an additional $60,000. And I think I met with you and members of planning staff, and ultimately I decided not to bring it here because there was no fault of the city of Ottawa. And so this is a very nominal amount, but my question to staff is, are we opening ourselves up for others to step forward and ask for the same type of relief?
Mr. Mark?
Madam Chair, of course, each particular application stands on its own. Committee may remember I actually complained under the Development Charges Act in the spring on Armstrong, as I recall, where it was somewhat similar. They were seeking a waiver of the entire charge, and in that case, Committee and Council upheld the staff position and denied the complaint. In this case, it's somewhat different. They're only seeking waiver of the interest charge. I have to say, I don't recall a similar request coming up in the past. That's not to say that if this one is granted, we won't see such requests in the future, but this is unique to date.
Okay. Anyone else? Yeah, Councillor Nussbaum?
Just a factual question that I wasn't clear on in the report. What would have been the amount of the credit that the owner would have received for the demolished property? That maybe I didn't read it properly, but is that information available?
That if they'd come within the period that would entitle them to the credit, that would have given them the full credit of $31,270.
Anyone else? So on the item? Thank you. All right. So the last item, we have a speaker on this item, and it is the invitation of zoning amendment, proposed farmers market, Riverview, Earl Armstrong Park and Ride. Does anyone have any questions before I go to the speaker? Where's my list person? No? Don Henderson from the Ottawa Farmers Market Association. Thank you for coming out today, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Welcome.
I am the Vice President of the Ottawa Farmers Market Association. I believe I've spoken to you folks in the past. I'm here in support of the motion. Mostly, I won't take too much time, just remind you what the Ottawa Farmers Market Association is all about. We have 135 members. About 60 to 70% of those members are primary producers, i.e. they are growers, they are farmers, all within 100 kilometers of the city of Ottawa. So all our members are local, whether they're farmers or secondary producers or crafters. All our members produce what they sell. We do not allow any resale of product in our farmers markets. That is a point I want to make very, very clear. This year we operated 3 markets around the city, one in Orleans that we started just this past year, obviously at Lansdowne Park, and another at the Westboro location in the Linear Park at Byron. The other point I wanted to make, because it seems to come up fairly often, is the economic impact of farmers markets. And there's been a number of studies throughout North America on what the economic impact of farmers markets really is. And, there's some local impact and then there's overall impact. The last study done here in Ottawa on local impact that I can speak to, because I also happen to be the Vice President of the Carp Farmers Market Association as well, was a study done that involved carp. And the results of that study was that $1 is spent in the local community for every dollar spent at the farmers market. That is consistent with what other studies across North America have found, that anywhere from 65 cents at the low end to $3 at the high end of the economic impact of farmers markets. So, although it seems like we're there to ensure that our members have access to markets, and we're there to ensure that customers have easy access to the goods that our markets sell. So I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone might have.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Kakish?
I don't have any questions. Thanks, Don, for coming out, and
Okay.
I'm looking forward to starting this next spring.
Hang on a
Okay,
second.
so are we.
And we do have a question. Councillor Brockington?
Thank you for your presentation. Do you think Ottawa needs more farmers markets? And if yes, how are you advocating for different locations?
Mostly we are being approached by, so I'll answer the second part first. We're being approached by portions of the city. In Councillor Cadre's ward, we were approached by the Community Association to say, hey, we would like a farmers market, and we've been working with the councillor to try to make that happen for next year. In the case of Riverside South, we were approached by Councillor Kakich. So we aren't out searching for places to have farmers markets. Although at the Lansdowne market, we had hoped that it would be larger than it was, and originally it was planned to be a larger market, so we could accommodate more of our members and in fact grow our membership. So there is some pressure on us to provide the environments where our members can vend their products to the public. And we can't grow at Lansdowne, so the only way we can grow is other locations, but we haven't been actively out there seeking other locations. In fact, the communities are coming to us.
I guess my other one would be not for this delegate, but the type of utility or services that are needed at markets. And I don't know if the Park and Ride needs electricity, water, washrooms, those types of things.
Just, I can kind of answer that question. The Orleans market that we ran this past year was in the Ray Friel parking lot. There was no electricity. Obviously, wind can be an issue for tents at a farmer's market. At some markets, we have tie-downs. At Lansdowne and at Orleans, we use big buckets of water to hold us down, and hopefully we don't end up in Kansas.
As long as you have your red shoes on. Anything else? Councillor Kakish, do you want to... thank you, Don, for coming out.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I just
Take
want
a
to
seat if you
thank
want.
members for supporting this, and thank Don, and I'm looking forward to working with you over the next few months to hash out all those details.
Okay. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Is it carried? All right. Any notices of motion? This is like close to a record or something, everybody. Usually when we have a time like this, we get really off track on something of interest. But don't try, no looking for it. Notices of motion? None? Any inquiries? Other business? No? So we're adjourned. And our next meeting is November the 8th, which is the night before Costco opens in Barhaven. Woohoo! Just saying. And it also is the election in the but I'm sorry, but in Barhaven it's more important that Costco's opening.